Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coaches Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and today is one of those special episodes where I get to meet somebody for the first time. Today on the podcast, we have Nicole Shattuck. Nicole is a Duke University sports performance coach. She joined Duke in August of 2021 and now works with US Lacrosse since October 2023. And originally from Rochester, New York, she's the chairperson for the NSCA Lacrosse Special Interest Group, has publications, strength training for lacrosse with human kinetics, and a contributing author to the Handbook of Strength and Conditioning, second edition. You've done a lot of stuff, Nicole.
Casually.
Casually. So,
I'm not serious about this at all, you know.
yeah, seriously. So you're all in on the lacrosse.
At this point, yes.
All right.
Honestly, the funny thing is because some people are like, "Oh, you played lacrosse." Nope. I actually grew up figure skating. I played ice hockey from like age 12, played club in college, and then um, all different sports, right? Like got
Mm-hmm.
involved that way. But lacrosse seemed to be the one that was calling me the most once I started working my way through college athletics. So I was like, you know what? If this is it, we'll go with it. And it's taken me a lot of cool places, and I get to do a lot of cool things. So I'm
Where
not mad at.
where'd you start your career in strength?
So I originally, when I graduated college, I was in sales. I was business. I was doing marketing
Okay.
and B2B stuff. But I had the opportunity to do some like group and personal training, and athletics was something that I had really been excited about when I was younger and thought I was going to be like sports med, like physical, PT type stuff. And I just kind of didn't really know where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And then, so kind of long story short, probably for about 8 years after college, kind of filtered and functioned through a bunch of different odd jobs, but was doing personal and group training, started working with high school like student athletes, and then I was like,
Okay.
okay, this is where I got to be. So I got certified NSCA, and then was exploring a little bit more and decided I wanted to go collegiate route. So where I ended up volunteering, and now this was when I was 29 years old, leaving Rochester, New York, for a volunteer internship at MSU Denver in Denver, a little D2 school, and that was it. There was no looking back. My mentor there, Isaiah Castilleja, he's now at Colorado School of Mines. And I remember having a heart to heart with him at one point. We were doing our workouts, and he always liked to grill me
Yeah.
um, and put me through the paces. But he was like, "What's the fallback?" I was like, "There is no fallback." He goes, "Burn the ships," and that was his. He's like, "Go." So
Yeah.
went all in on it. So yeah, MSU Denver was where I got my start, and then Wofford was next, Bucknell after that, and now here at Duke. So
When were
been
you at
very
Bucknell?
2018. Mm, I'm sorry, March 2019 to August 2021 when I got here. So yeah,
Were you there?
that's
Were you there at the same time as Cody Miller?
no, he had just left.
Ah,
Yeah.
Cody's one of my best friends.
Oh my gosh, no way. Yeah.
He's
So
actually, yeah,
small world, small
he's
world.
coaching me. He's
That's
coaching
awesome.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, man, I love this industry.
Look at that.
Yeah. Um, so there's a few things that I think are worth pulling out. Like the concept of starting as a volunteer in 2025 would blow the doors off of someone's mindset if I propose that to them. What made you so apt to just say, fuck it, I'm going to go give my time for free?
hmm I think so. The good and the bad, right? You have good
Mhm.
coaches, you have bad coaches, you have good experiences, and no matter what, they shape you.
Right.
For me, it was not knowing what I wanted to do for so long and feeling a bit lost and being like, oh, this is it. No, it's not. This is it. And kind of having, I think, enough experiences under my belt by then where I was like, there's nothing else. People ask, on interviews and they go, oh, what would you do if you weren't a coach? And sometimes there's a real answer to that. But for me, it's I've done everything else. Like when I was working in sales, I always had some other part time job or thing that I would be passionate about and help
Right.
kind of grow my interests and hobbies. But I think at a certain point, and I think I think there were times in my life where I was like, oh, I'm going to be in Rochester. I'm going to meet someone. We're going to raise a family. And I think probably for too long, I had thought like, oh, I had thought about the wrong things instead of saying like,
Mm,
what actually brings me joy. And when I'm coaching and when I'm working with student athletes, that's it. Like, but it took me a long time to figure that out. And so when I finally found it, I'm like, oh, I can't let this go. And so I think
yeah.
all those ideas of this is what my life is supposed to be like. And I think growing up in the neighborhood I did, it was, these are the things that are going to happen. And I was one of the older, like, older kids in our neighborhood, first, first to high school, first to this, first to that. And I'm like, oh, this isn't it. And so I definitely broke the mold in a way. I don't know if my parents were like really excited. So I think that was the hard part.
Yeah.
So I did get a lot of pushback. It wasn't, you know, some interns that we even have come through, and our interns, our coaching assistants, they're all volunteer as well. And sometimes they do have support of their family, sometimes they don't. And my parents were like, good luck. They helped get me out to Colorado. They're like, here's $1,000,
Yeah.
thumbs up, we're rooting for you. But like, so for me, it was knowing that there was no other way. Because I had probably enough heart to hearts with myself to sit there and be like, yeah, like I've done it all and nothing else is it. So,
Yeah. I mean, for anyone who's had the experience of being on the gym floor with that like 17 to 21-year-old age group and
mhm,
the impact that you can have on them, it's truly something special. I remember, so when I decided that I wanted to go into strength and conditioning, I literally hopped on Google and I wrote NCAA Coach of the Year. And I was like, and I just sent an email to Ron McKeefery and I was like, Ron, I want to come work for you for free.
yes,
I worked 4 different jobs. I remember working at a nightclub, bouncing until like 4 a.m. and then opening the supplement store at 8 a.m. the next day, like
yes,
all the time. I saved up, I think 12 to $14,000 because I had to support myself driving to Florida because as a like I came over on like a tourist visa, so you're not allowed to earn a living.
yeah,
So I had to pay my rent, my food, all my bills, everything like that without a job.
uh-huh,
And then as soon as I got into my master's program, I was able to get a job. But for me, it was that's what it was. Giving up being a college strength coach was the hardest decision I've ever had to make,
mhm,
and I still miss it to this day. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about my job now that I love and I would never give up, but it is something special. But when you're in that situation, I wrote down while you were talking, like, when do you make the decision to burn the ships? Because for me, I didn't burn the ships. So I worked in the private sector in insurance for 6 years while I built my business.
mhm,
So the business was fully formed, profitable. I was making double what I was making in my full time job. And then I finally was like, okay, we're done. I'm going all in. You burnt the ships way before that. What was going through your mind at that point?
well, so while I had been, you know, building my personal and group training business, right, I always had a part-time job. So probably something really similar is, you know, I worked a 40-hour week job and I bookended it. Okay. Then 2 years after, I got a 30-hour week job and I kept bookending. And then finally I got hooked up working with a real estate agent and doing all her marketing, social media. And that's when I also had started coaching. So, like, I had a patchwork of jobs in
Yeah.
Rochester while I was trying to build this. And then when I had decided, okay, college coaching, that's where I'm headed. I looked up kind of like what you did with Ron McKeefery. I found someone who had a similar story. The NSCA had like a mentorship like directory at the time.
Okay.
Her name's Rebecca. She was the director at Wellesley College, and I called her up, and she was so gracious to give me some of her time, and she told me, she's like, if this is what you want to do, like you have to get your foot in the door, and it's got to be, unfortunately, probably volunteering where you're at, because there's not a
Yeah.
lot of opportunities even where I was. And then I had personally gotten to a point where I'm like, I can't continue to do this where I'm doing 8 or 9 other things to support myself.
Yeah.
So that's where I decided, like, I have to go all in on one thing instead of putting 20% into building a business, 20%, coaching. these crew athletes, because I was working with a crew club,
Okay.
and then another amount of time doing like the marketing stuff. I was like, this is like, it got to a point where I was like, I can't do it all. And
It's almost, yeah, it's
yeah,
almost like there's just too much bandwidth being taken up by stuff that doesn't light your fire.
yeah. And it was exhausting. And you can't give, I mean, this job, as you know,
Yes.
it's so fulfilling, but it takes a lot out of you. So you have to like, I thought, okay, I have to be able to commit to it. Right.
Mm,
And so I think for me was kind of cutting some ties in Rochester, and not in a bad way, but just saying like, all right, put your big girl britches on, and like, we're going out west. And then it was about finding jobs that also aligned with it. Right. So
right.
even though I was volunteering, okay, I did an Olympic, like a kids Olympic, part-time gig. So I would work evenings teaching Olympic lifts to like 11 to 18-year olds. Awesome.
Mhm.
That also is helping me learn,
Right.
helping me coach better. And then it's also putting some money in my bank account. So I think, you can't ever ignore the financial aspect of it. But then, saying like, all right, for a small period of time when I first moved out to Denver, I started working at Arby's because I'm like, that's the quickest job I can get. But,
Yeah,
knowing
just
that,
make
like,
money.
yes, and knowing that I could do that for a couple months until I got a couple jobs lined up that were in line with coaching. And then, yeah, it's just knowing that you have to focus, right? I was already so far behind on the education piece, right? I had to go back for my master's. I,
Mhm.
needed mentorship. I didn't, if that's really, if you've not been in college coaching, you need your reps. You need your reps
Yeah.
doing that too. And that's so it was kind of having awareness of it, but also getting to a point where I don't know if I always handled it. I tell you right now, I didn't handle it gracefully at points. I was exhausted. I
Yeah,
my
of
old
course.
my old roommates were like, "Yeah, you were like the ghost." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we knew you existed. We knew you slept here, but we don't always know like when you're coming and going because I was just working so much.
Yeah, you probably didn't sleep there a lot of the time. I
No,
remember I have so many stories of like sleeping under a massage table in the weight room. Like
just
just because you couldn't get home in time after the last group to be there first thing in the morning. And it's you do it because you love it. And having the wherewithal to know like there are sacrifices to be made in the short term for that long-term gain. I think there are a select few people who are willing to make those sacrifices. And I don't even actually I've actually stopped using the word sacrifices and I started using the word investments
yeah,
because
I
it
think that's
truly is
great.
an investment because you're putting off your comfort, in a lot of instances your health, your mental health to pursue something that is exactly what you want to do, and you have to have the utmost confidence that it's going to pay off. Was that something that you battled with? Like, were there ever any times where you're like, I don't know if I could keep doing this?
I think sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? Like, I have friends who have said like, I feel like I missed out on my 20s. I didn't really have that cuz I mean, I probably the thing I gave up was sleep, unfortunately,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
I was social. I hustled with my jobs, but like, then I think came a point where I'm like, all right, is this really paying off? Right? So if I'm sure I traded some things out along the way. I think I tell my athletes, sleep, success, social life. You get your three, but you can't have all three, right? Like, it's a choice. One of them's gonna be sacrificed over the other. And
Mhm.
so I think when you're like, all right, you know what, this is what's more fulfilling for me, you know? And it was knowing I had to shift priorities from time to time. Um, but yeah.
Do you ever think back? I do this all the time. Do you ever think back and look at the schedule you used to keep and think, there's no fucking way I could do that?
I'm so glad it's over.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, you can look back and be like, "Man, I did it because I had to." I
Yeah.
don't know, I think sometimes I do okay in chaos, you know what I mean? But
I
then
think we all do. I
yeah,
think you
and
have
then
to.
and then the dust settles and you're like, I can't believe I did that. I cannot believe." But so when I was in Colorado, I lived one of my best friends, Kelly. She was a nurse's aide at one of the hospitals, right? And
Okay.
I remember coming back so upset one day. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And she's like, I have been literally like cleaning out bedpans for the past 2 years while I'm trying to get my education for nursing. Like, you can do it. Like, there is an end in sight. So I think also having like people in your corner who can like, hey,
Yep.
buck up, and also look at it. It's short term sacrifice. And that's it. Investment, I think, is the perfect word, reframe for it.
Yeah. How did the transition to like the women's lacrosse specialty come in? Because I see here that, obviously you coach other sports as well.
Mhm.
Because I mean, there's no women's lacrosse only strength and conditioning in NCAA, I'm sure.
Well,
But
there is like one right now, but it just
really,
happened this summer. Yeah, so Penn State just hired for
no,
women's lacrosse only. We'll see though. I think Title IX is always a factor and stuff like that
right.
because usually, I mean, it doesn't matter if you offer it for the men's, it needs to be available for the women's. Same thing,
True.
it's got to go both ways. So we'll see. But yeah, so no, it's very atypical that would be a lacrosse only position. So I started working with lacrosse at Wofford College.
Okay.
And so the situation there is as part of my contract, right, we had room and board that was provided by our contract. So I lived with one of the assistant coaches and ended up being I ended up, that was one of my teams that I worked with, right? And
Yep.
so just collaborating with her, understand, she had played Division 1, and I was like, okay, help me understand the sport better. Like, I want to learn from you. And so, man, did that help with buy-in, right? Like, I was
Oh
able
yeah.
to pick her brain, and she was able to reinforce some things, right? And so we worked really well together. And then the head coach had turned over. She had become the interim head coach. So for a time, it was us, taking this team through. And so, but what I've experienced with lacrosse coaches overall is that they respect what we do in a way that like a football coach looks at their strength coach and says, I trust you, you're
I
going to do
agree.
the conditioning, I don't want to deal with it, you're doing it. And that's what I wanted. When I worked at Wofford, part of my responsibility um, was to assist with football. So we were there for every football run, every football lift, winter, spring, summer, fall. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, you want to be
Mhm.
a coach, like, this is it. Like, strength and conditioning, you're doing it all. And, but again, also understanding that that's that's a really tough year, right? And if you're going to work at a high level in football, you're probably also tying yourself to a head coach. So just kind of understanding and looking at that and being like, well, what do I want? What makes sense? And I saw lacrosse as the sport to be able to do that with, which was really cool. So I was fortunate at Bucknell as well, worked really well with the coaches there. And then that led to everything here. Like our head coach, Kirsten Kimmel, she, when I started here, was like, was very hands off with me as far as
Mhm.
you go, you do what you need to. And I think it was the vibe of it's mine to lose. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I'm sure if I didn't get the job done, it would have been a different conversation. But every year it feels like we're growing together, and that's awesome. So
I found women's lacrosse was a really interesting group of young women because number one, they're batshit crazy, like in the best
it's
way.
it's it's a vibe, that's for sure.
They're so feisty,
Hmm.
and they approach challenges in a way that's very unique to women's athletics. Having worked with a number of different women's sports, um, I remember we did their conditioning test, and these girls literally ran the piss out of themselves.
Hmm.
Like they ran
Yes.
until they peed themselves, and they didn't care.
Hmm.
And I was just mind blown at the level of effort that they could put in. And you mentioned working with, like living with the coach. Talk to me a little bit about buy-in because it's something that I speak on a lot. It's a common theme when I speak to other coaches of how to create buy-in, how to engage your clients or how to engage your athletes. What are some of the core tenets for you to achieve buy-in with the women that you're working with or the athletes in general?
Yeah, I think it's speaking their language. And so if you want to talk athletes on a personal level, it's right? Ask them how they're doing. Who are the important people in your life, right? So that when I follow up with you, hey, how's so and so? How's your best friend? How's, you know, your mom, dad, grandma, something like that, right? Is
Hmm.
knowing those personal relationships that are important to them or their roommate, things that they're interested in. So, talking the talk and walking the walk, I think is a, just be genuine.
Yep.
And I think when it comes to the sport, I mean, at Bucknell, I had 7 different teams, and one of them was water polo. And you want to talk about a sport that is very obscure to me, like,
Oh yeah.
so I had the assistant coach there. I said, "Can you put me through like a pool workout? I keep reading about this thing that's they call it the egg beater. Instead of treading water, they move their feet in a very specific way." And she's like, "Yeah, I'd love to. Put it on my Instagram. Got the
Yeah.
got them excited about it." Because then they're like, oh, this person cares, this person knows. And I think it's that, so for lacrosse, I think in particular, yeah, sure, now it certainly helps to have this experience with US lacrosse, but before then it was, am I watching games? Am I knowing who some of these players are? Or am I
Hmm.
asking them, hey, who do you look up to in this space? Who's your favorite lacrosse player to watch, kind of thing? Um, and then with the coaches too, is again speaking their language. So if I
Yeah.
can talk about, what teams are hot, knowing what teams are in the conference and stuff, and so then
Hmm.
that way you build some rapport with them. Because I think, yeah, it's that Ron McKeefer. He's got that quote, right? It's not what you know, it's you know what I mean, how much you care, something like
Yeah.
that. I feel like I heard that on the podcast
Yeah.
for a number of times, but yeah, they when they see how much you care, that's how much, that's what's going
Yeah.
to matter. Yeah.
The the thing that jumps out to me is like, and this was a lesson Ron taught me as well. When I first got there to South Florida, I went into his office and I'm like, Ron, these kids are not listening to me. Like I had no way of relating to these kids. They just didn't give a shit what I had to say. And he's like, Paul, you're a white 5'10" Canadian kid who never played football. Why would they listen to you? And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, is there going to be advice here? And he said, you need to compete in something. You need to pick something and you need to compete in it, and they need to see you working hard. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm pretty strong. I'll just compete in powerlifting. And I ended up being very successful in powerlifting. But as soon as they saw me training for it, I was now walking the walk. I was now showing them that I work just as hard as I'm asking them to work. So what you're saying is entrenching yourself in the sport, learning the details, learning the nuance so that you can actually have meaningful conversations with them about something that's important to them. Now they know that you actually genuinely care. And I'm sure with water polo, they saw those workouts and they're like, oh, coach is in it.
Hmm.
And now all of a sudden they care what you have to say. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I had the lacrosse team this year. We were just messing around before one of our it was the day before a game. I make the warm up, put a little competition in it, and just to get them like not so stressed about the game tomorrow, right? Like loosen them up a bit. And I said, okay, if this group wins, I said, you can pick my conditioning for the day.
Oh
And
God.
oh my gosh, like you want to see them light up. They were so excited to assign me conditioning. And of course, it was one of their most loved runs, but they were like, you have to do a 3 by 300. And I was like, all right,
Oh,
fine. And I did it. And they were like, did you really run it? I'm like, yeah. so, um, so yeah, so any chance you can, I'm not saying go rip a bunch of lacrosse conditioning pieces, but you never know what you can get out of them. Yeah. So
what's been what's been your proudest moment as a coach?
I don't know. I think there have been a couple instances where I had I've had an athlete kind of just look at me, and now, because this is the longest I've been at any place, has been 4 years now at Duke.
Mhm.
So some of it is just seeing that natural, like, full circle moment when you're like, oh man, I remember when you were freshman and now you're here. And, like you can see that growth and maturation, but that's maybe more like the reflection of it. But I remember having an athlete kind of have a light bulb moment. And this is where like that real world stuff comes in,
Yeah,
where she was like, you handled, she, I remember she had shared some pretty heavy stuff with me. And she was like, she made a pretty big girl decision for herself. And she's like, it meant a lot to me that I was able to share that with you. And like, I think for me, that was probably, that's how I know I'm doing my job right. Do you know what I mean? Is
I know
yeah,
exactly what you mean.
yeah, it's like that's the connection. And that's why it's this age group for me is like seeing that those pieces all go together for that person. And she made the right decision for her. You know what I mean? And so that's probably where I'm like, oh man, I'm doing it right. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
It it doesn't surprise me in the least that, you know, there are some coaches that I have on the podcast that I say, "Hey, what's your proudest moment as a coach?" And it's some sort of achievement or outcome.
Hmm.
But without fail, any college strength coach that I have on the podcast, it always has to do with some sort of personal victory of the young people that they've worked with,
Yeah.
whether it be, you know, a kid who had no business graduating graduates, or, you know, maybe they see a marriage between two of the athletes that that are working with them, or something along those lines. So, you know, I wrote down, I'm like, you know, the wins as a coach come from people, not outcomes.
Absolutely.
And that's ultimately why you do it, because I mean, I've been very upfront about the the paycheck that I was getting as a college strength coach. You're not doing this for the money.
Ooh.
Do you
Nope.
ever have do you ever have like a like grass is greener thoughts?
I think it comes back to that I've done, I feel like I've done everything else. No, like and I can use my siblings as an example. I think that they work some pretty lucrative jobs, right?
Mm,
And they're very good at what they do. Whether it's sales, pharmaceuticals, and we've had those conversations where, my brother actually coached and that helped him get his master's, and he does some volunteer coaching now, but we'll talk about it, and I'm all in on the coaching, and he's made the transition out of it, and I'm like, yeah, like, good for you, right?
yeah,
Like, you've found what fits your values and your lifestyle. And I think just coming back to that, and I think if I had other things I wanted to accomplish, I buy a house, buy this, buy that, if it came down to the money, yeah, maybe this wouldn't be the right fit, but it's not about that. it's
yeah.
it's about the joy you get in seeing the next generation be better
I
from the
love that.
lessons they learn in the weight room or on the field with each other, the things that we accomplish as a team. That's what it's about. And I think if I get to a point, where I'm not looking forward to that, then
Mhm.
maybe it's time to be out of coaching. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's enough for me.
I remember the speech that I gave to my athletes when I decided that I was leaving my last strength and conditioning job, and I remember saying, I was like, I'm not in a position to give you as much of myself as you deserve. And that's truly the way that I see the college strength coach, is you guys give so much to these young kids, and it's coming from a place of you just want to see them succeed.
Hmm.
And I love that you're really hitting that home, and you know, putting that nail in, because if you want to be a college strength coach, it cannot be a selfish endeavor. It can't. No.
We're
Um,
a behind the scenes bunch,
yeah,
behind the scenes.
yeah. One topic that I would really love to dive into is being a female in a male dominated profession. When I was coming up in strength and conditioning, I officially left college strength in 2015. Yes, I'm very old. Um, so that was 10 years ago. And at the time, Andrea Hootie was the only head strength coach in the country
Hmm.
as a female. There's been a massive influx of amazing female coaches coming into the industry, and female coaches achieving very high levels of professional success. How have you seen the industry change as a female coach?
So when I started, what was that, 2017, as a volunteer assistant. And that's when, through some of our heart to hearts, Isaiah had encouraged me. He said, name 10 female strength coaches. And I was like, and he goes, okay, name five. I'm still like, and so that
Hmm.
was my next assignment, was call, connect. And just like you would network with any other type of coach, is find female strength coaches. And one of my favorites, that I got a chance to talk to, is Angie Brambley Moyer, and she's still at Princeton. And
Hmm.
I remember one of the things she said to me was, don't ever walk into a room thinking like, oh, I'm the only female, or I just want to be the best female strength coach, because there likely won't be other females in your midst.
Hmm.
And that's just the state of, um, and it's just what it is, and I was like, all right, like and I've been very fortunate to work on staffs that have, you know, I've never felt less than. I've always felt respected. But I've always been treated equally, right?
Right.
Um, this is the cool thing for me, is I've kind of lived the progression, is right, started out
Yeah.
as the only female on staff, and now so fortunate that on a staff of 8 we have 3 female strength coaches, right? And so I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's almost representative of the amount of athletes, you know what I mean, the
Right.
percentage of athletes, where I know through our field it's about 14 to 16%, which is very small. but
Oof.
but I think again, it's just understanding and believing in yourself, but also knowing what you bring to the table. Don't sit there and say, oh, like, I could never coach a men's team because I don't know what it's like to. No, you know what it's like to coach a person and an
Mhm.
athlete. So, and it goes both ways. Um, I think just keeping, what do the kids say? Keep the main thing, right?
Yeah.
Is yeah, sure. If you want to have an awareness of it. But I think also, I love seeing that we do have, when we have interns and stuff like that, we have, plenty of male applicants, both ways. So it's cool to see how it's growing, and more, you know, more females are getting into the field, for sure. And I think that's probably representative of, college athletics overall.
Yeah.
Um,
It's I don't want to say it surprises me, but it does strike me a little bit that I was expecting you to say something along the lines of, yeah, I have a chip on my shoulder and I'm, trying to prove myself and stuff like that, because I mean that's how I was, and I was just like a Canadian kid. So I couldn't imagine, like, jumping in, but you're basically saying, nope, I know what I bring to the table, and that's going to be what it is. Whatever happens, happens. I'm going to do the best job that I can as a strength coach and not even worry about the fact that I'm female.
yeah. I did have, I think, and this was before I had applied to Duke. I had somebody reach out to me that summer from like a local, where I was, local D3, and it was an athletic director asking me to apply for his head strength and conditioning job position. I was like, oh, like, how'd you get my name? And he goes, well, I was looking for female strength coaches in the area. And I was like, ooh. I think that's the only time I was like not really excited to hear that, because I'm like, oh, like,
Yeah.
man, like, it would have been cool to be recognized for something I had done, or,
Yeah.
not just because I was a female. And I was like, oh boy, like, I didn't want to apply to that job just because you were looking for,
You don't want
anyway.
to be a DEI hire.
Yeah, that one was odd. But then I had talked with my boss, at the time I had talked to him about it. And he was like, look at her to apply and then ask for, like, I don't know, 6 figures. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess whatever. So lesson learned there. Um, but anyways, but yeah, so yeah, you want to be called to the table because of what you bring to the table,
Absolutely.
is what I would say.
Talk to me a little bit about your involvement with the NSCA. How did that start? And obviously, it's developed into publications, authorships, and stuff like that. How did that start?
Yeah. Well, when I had looked at proper certification, right, and knowing that if I'm going to pursue college athletics, I need proper certification, needed to fill, the education gap that I had, and so I was NSCA certified, and through that, just kind of continued to build on. networking, going to some events, and I went to CSCCA events too. But I think that the NSCA at the time, I had gone to some networking event and I met one of the people on the special interest group, and I thought, oh wow, like they work with lacrosse and one other team. Wow, wouldn't that be a really cool thing? And so through some of the educational components that the NSCA Lacrosse Special Interest Group had put out is how I got interested. And I thought, wow, like that, those are the people I want to align myself with and learn from mostly, which I thought was so cool. So Tracy Zimmer, in the summer of 2020, when we were all, COVID, um,
Mm,
she had put together a podcast or, like a Zoom and posted it on the Facebook wall. And it was for D1 college strength coaches, all women's lacrosse. And I was like, that's what I want to be. Um,
mm,
and so learning from them and then just trying to get involved, submitting the application when it became open. And then, just taking those opportunities. I love to learn from other coaches. A big reason I do what I do is because I've had such great mentorship. But we all share information and help each other out. And I think especially, with lacrosse strength and conditioning, as you know, I'm sure, like working at Richmond with the team, is there's so much to be learned and shared. And so if you're not used to working with lacrosse or never played it yourself, so it's just, I think that's how it all, that's the long of the short, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
a lot of it is networking, asking questions, and then saying like, who else, now that I'm in a position where I am, I'm like, okay, well, I want to help share that information because this is all the stuff that helped me.
It was always really refreshing to me how little gatekeeping there was in the college world. I remember when I was coming up, one of the homework assignments Ron gave us was to email 5 different strength coaches and ask for their summer training manuals.
Hmm.
Not a single person said no. I ended up with like 20 training manuals. And, when you're in a situation where wins count and, your record is going to count for your career trajectory and you're always going to be tied to outcomes that you might not always be in control of, you would think that, oh, I want to keep my secret sauce to myself. But what you're saying is like, no, there's groups of people that will literally give you any and all information they can to help you.
Hmm.
I'm assuming that your job, your one of the main jobs that you feel like you have now is paying that forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have so many people to thank for the position and, the opportunities that I've been so fortunate to have. And mentorship it's something that I feel really strongly about. We want to continue to grow not only the profession, but like we want to help elevate new strength coaches, young strength coaches, and, you know, pass it on for
Yeah.
sure.
What have been some of the coolest like tech gadgets, things that you guys are starting to do now? Because I know when I was getting out, it was all about catapult and GPS and VBT. Like how much of that sort of stuff has permeated itself into the training now?
Don't you use VBT when you do your powerlifting meets? And
No,
I'm
no, I
teasing.
do not.
Yeah, no, I would say it's probably still very similar. I think what I've also seen is maybe a little bit more on like biomarkers, but that costs a lot of money. So like you're
Oh
probably
yeah,
going to see that more in professional sports, but here like collegiate wise, I think it's still, the heavy emphasis on the GPS if you have it. Any type of force plates. We love our force plates. It's just a little difficult with a large team. So, I'm still on jump mats, but yeah, so it's really nice to see how our sports science department has grown here, even over the past couple of years that I've been. Now we have that support, which is great.
yeah,
But yeah, and then so yeah, GPS, we still do our 10-yard dash, but and the kids love their whoop, right? Like they want to see the feedback on that. I'm like,
really.
yeah, like they like the I think if we just gave each person their GPS data every day, which I know is a tall task, but they want to see how far they ran, they want to see what their heart rate got to. So I think it's probably still very similar as to what you left.
I always found that so I'm the most non-science guy. Like,
Mhm.
I love the science. I think it's great. I hated it when it got into the weight room because I felt like it took away, especially in a team environment, I felt like it took away from just training.
Mhm.
And what I'm seeing now is like a massive spike in data focused training.
Mhm.
Has has the implementation of those strategies changed the way you coach, like for better or for worse?
I think my philosophy on technology is it really should just confirm like what you're already trying to do. Like, right? So I think it's definitely helped our coaches and like planning, right? When I'm
Mm,
working with them and we're looking at the week and they're saying, "Well, we want these days to be our high days." Right now we're starting to speak the same language as far as training goes. And so that helps me put my pieces into place a little bit better. So we do have perch. We're, really lucky. All three of our weight rooms, the basketballs, football, and then our Olympic weight room, each rack has perch, which is awesome. So that's our VBT. We used to have Tendo units,
mhm.
but the wear and tear on those, kind of
Yeah.
adds up. And then, yeah, so we have perch. And
What
if
is
I,
perch? I've never heard of it.
so it's a camera, like laser capture,
Oh,
for
cool.
barbell tracking. Yeah. So I'm not sure like standard error of measurement, but it's really nice that we have it at every rack.
Right.
And yeah, so VBT and it's nice to hear like you can have the settings and if you're like, okay, in your program today, here's the range and I want you to hit between zero point 0.7 and 1.0 average, meters per second. And you hear the little ding, ding, ding every time they do their reps. So sometimes again, it just confirms how you want them to move. But I don't know. I think just getting them in here consistently probably is sometimes the biggest battle.
That's fair enough. You wrote that you wanted to chat about discipline. Discipline is a very interesting topic for me, especially working with a lot of general population.
Hmm.
I would love your take on, obviously working with collegiate athletics at a high level.
Hmm.
How do you train discipline? How do you assess discipline?
Hmm.
How does discipline play a role in your coaching practice?
For me, it comes back to so I've read this book. The guy's name is Ed Deci, and it's like I think 100 pages maybe,
Okay.
but it's called Why We Do What We Do, and it all comes back to autonomy, right? And he does a really good job of describing like why kids are motivated to learn in the first place and maybe how parts of our education system aren't really helping that, right? Like we're
Yeah.
inherently curious, right? And we're motivated to learn and to grow and to understand the world around us, right? And
Mhm.
so one of the things with working with this age range that I really like is to help them understand their motivations, and help them develop that sense of autonomy, right? Like
Mm,
I'm I'm fortunate where I am too, right? Like my the student athletes that I coach, a lot of them want to win, right? They want to win a national championship, they want to win an ACC title, right? Like those are the things, but that can't necessarily be it. And so helping them understand like, yeah, that's the big picture, but on a day-to-day basis, you don't just show up and win an ACC title, right? It comes down to those daily habits. And so having those conversations with them when we say, okay, we're going to set up our warm up. And so part of it is me being disciplined, right? Is to
right.
walk the walk, talk the talk.
Right.
And then as we execute, it's everybody's on my whistle. Okay, we get a false start. All right, we start over. And that doesn't mean punitive punishment necessarily, but it just means we're going to start over because we want to have that mindset of you can call it excellence. You can say, right, like this is what a blue devil does, or you know what I mean? Like you can
Right. Build it into
have
the
those.
culture.
Yeah, and so I think I'm not alone in building that culture, right? I think one of the things that our coaches did this year is they were fed up with some of the things that were happening. The locker room was messy. People were walking from the locker room, on the sidewalk in their cleats, grinding down the cleats, these really expensive cleats. Okay, well, if you're caught doing that, your teammate's going to issue you a yellow card. And however many yellow cards you accrue, that might actually equal they'd spin a wheel and they either, have to clean out the shed. Okay.
Right.
You have to restring a goal. And I tell you
Oof.
what, like it starts to add up. And so, some of it is like we have to find a way to make it happen. And I think once you see the payoff, I think it's tough when you're like in the thick of it and maybe you're not having a winning season. Maybe things aren't going, you know what I mean? I think that
Yeah.
that's when you have it tough. And that's when our job as coaches is to be like, hey, I got to look at the big picture for you and I got to shake you out of it, take
Yeah.
take a step back and take a look. So I think for me it's also, so it's not only hitting those desires that they may have to be successful on the field, but then you know, it's also having that understanding that they may not love the weight room, and that's okay. Not
Yeah.
some of my athletes do. Some of them are like big meatheads, and they want to play their sport, but also saying like, again, we have to do the little things well. And
Mhm.
I tell you what, discipline equals freedom. We hear it all the
Yep.
time. On if you're on that side of Twitter, Instagram, whatever, the little habits make a big difference, because then guess what? I don't have to worry about it tomorrow, right? If I'm going to do those little things now and set myself up for success, man, it's already taken care of. And that's one less thing I have to do in the morning if I put off meal prep. Okay, well, I don't always want to meal prep. It's going to make my day a lot easier though. So,
Yeah. I love that your focus is on habits when it comes to discipline. Cause like I mentioned, working with Gen Pop clients, discipline is often seen as a resource. It's like, okay, I have discipline. It's like, okay, for how long? Right? Like how deep is that cup of discipline? So the way that I've conceptualized discipline for our clients is discipline is a transition point and it's the transition point of learning to make it a habit. So if you're talking about excellence, well, the little habits required to be excellent initially require a lot of discipline to implement. Your meal prep, being on the clock, wearing the right shirt, the cleats on the pavement, that sort of thing. Initially, that's going to be discipline. But once it transitions into being a habit, now it's like brushing your teeth. You are excellent. It's no longer requiring discipline for you to be excellent. And I think that to me is the role of the coach, is to get them through that transition point.
yeah.
And I'm sure you can speak to this deeply, but when someone really buys into those lessons, that's when you get those big wins as a coach,
Hmm.
right? Like the majority of the athletes that you coach are not going to go play pro. They're going to go be pros in the rest of their life.
Hmm.
So can that discipline transition into that?
That's the hope, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and again, I've been, fortunate to work with athletes who, and it was very similar at Bucknell. They're very academically motivated. And so sometimes the hardest conversation with them is, hey, you need to get more sleep. You can't be up that late studying, but they want to do well in the classroom too. And so I think you know, that's a balance that they have a tough time with. But, you know,
What's the what would you say is the hardest thing to relate to the athlete of today? Because I think young people are different now than they were 10 years ago. What's been your observation in that regard?
I think some of it has to do with the resources that athletes have,
Okay.
nowadays. And it's not just at D1. I think it's at other levels as well, is the fact that, most colleges now have strength coaches, right? Like, and that's not to say that everybody has a full staff of 8, but to even have a weight room, my buddy Matt Nine at Salisbury, they're redoing their whole weight room. That's a D3 school, but they've fundraised for it. And I guarantee you, alums from 10 years ago are going to walk through that weight room and could be like, wow, we never had this,
Mm.
And so I think it's just the awareness, it's the resources, and knowing that, like, you're so lucky to have all the things that you do. You really
Do,
are, and the money that is going into athletics.
do they know how lucky they are though?
I think sometimes you have to put it in a back in my day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and to kind of paint that picture and say, like, this is what you asked for, and I think maybe sometimes it comes when they're maybe, oh, woe is me, like, oh man, like we had a morning row, let's say, like we were out on the water this morning and now I got this, and then I have to study and do all these things. And I'm like, this is like, that's all you have to do. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
so lucky. I would have loved that. I would have loved to do that today. Um, and sometimes sharing your experiences and just to say, like, yeah, like played club ice hockey in college and we didn't get a nice fancy ice time. We had to wait till intramurals was done. We had to wait till the beer league was out on the ice with us because we couldn't afford to pay. So, like kind of painting the picture sometimes. And
Yeah. Just like reframing it.
yeah, reframing it a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
do
I've
do
seen,
do they realize? I don't know. I don't know if they do. I mean, man, they Uber Eats. They Uber Eats dessert. They want ice cream. They don't have to go anywhere for it. I'm like, what?
yeah, I've found that there's been a bit of a transition in terms of like, we've mentioned discipline, we've mentioned accountability. I think that those skills in this day and age as young people are solely lacking because of the immediate gratification that they can get in a lot of areas of their life. But I've always looked at training as like, you can't speed it up. Like, you cannot get stronger faster than your body will allow. You cannot acquire skill faster than your body will allow. And it doesn't come without hard work.
Hmm.
So I actually really love that, a lot of our conversation today was focused on that, because that truly is the beauty of training.
Hmm.
And if you can teach that to a 17 to 21-year-old, like they're set for life.
Absolutely. I'm, even right, like the head coach, her youngest, I think she's about to be a freshman in high school or sophomore in high school, something like that. And she's like, she keeps asking me if she can come work with you, and
Mhm.
I had trained her a little bit last year, but her whole thing was I want her to want it. She's like, I'm now she's realizing, okay, you know, if I want to be faster, if I want to be this, if I want to be that. And I remember I sat down with her again this summer, just at one of the camps, and she's like, "These are the things I want to work." And I said, "You remember when we did this, this, and this in your training?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Those are the things that help that." And she goes, "Oh," you know what I mean? And so sometimes just not hearing it from mom and dad helps too, but just to
Mhm.
see like again those light bulbs come on. I mean, that's probably one of the main reasons I coach is because I probably needed a mentor like that, and I didn't have one, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my parents probably told me all those things, and I was just like, nah, I don't want to listen. you
Yeah.
know.
It's it's something that I take very seriously as a coach, is the ability to like tie the person's goals to their behaviors. And I think as young athletes, maybe you're really gifted in your skill set. So maybe you've never had to work as hard on the physical side, or maybe opposite. Maybe you're super physically gifted, and you've had to work really hard on the skill side of things. But when you get to a level where everyone is awesome and you have no choice but to rise to the occasion, and then you have someone like yourself there to remind them, hey, every single thing you do today is leading you towards that goal.
Hmm.
One of my favorite quotes I heard recently was, setting a goal means agreeing to the lifestyle required to achieve it. And if you don't live that lifestyle, you're making an agreement with yourself to be unhappy. And that really hit home for me, because I feel like in coaching, especially with young people, there may be an ignorance to the association between those little micro behaviors, micro decisions. But you as the coach get to see firsthand
Hmm.
the outcomes. Like, I'm sure the kid walks in the weight room and they pick up a barbell for the first time. You're going to know exactly what they did last night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
It's a dead giveaway every time.
yeah, they'll like just like completely fold over in their spine. You're like,
Oh
you
boy.
didn't get any sleep last night.
Mhm.
um, let's transition to a few quick hit questions, maybe a little bit more about about you and your mindset. So you mentioned you were coaching Olympic weightlifting for a little bit. Do you compete at all?
No, I've thought
No.
about it. Yeah, I just I really like Olympic weightlifting. I think
Okay.
the technical aspects of it are like, yeah, like that gets me excited. But no, I've never competed, and mostly because when I was um like finally full time in an in a weight room setting, is I wasn't able to train like as consistently. And
Uh-huh.
so that's probably something I'll have to look at now. I'll get to look at now, that
Yeah.
but yeah, I think trying to balance everything. When I first started out in college strength and conditioning, um,
Yeah.
just didn't have enough time to be consistent with training. So we'll see. We'll see.
What's been the craziest thing you've ever seen in the weight room?
Oh man. Um, I guess like not training wise, we had the craziest weight room I've ever been in was at Wofford. And I think they still have it, carpet in the weight room, and so that's
What?
probably yeah, carpet laid out through the weight room. We were like, what? So it is a very strange thing. And I remember when I first got to Bucknell, the first question that my new coworker had asked, he goes, is it really carpeting in that weight room? I was like, yeah. So the craziest thing in there, I remember we came in from a run and I'm sorry, Spartanburg, South Carolina, we're not getting a lot of breeze this time of year. So
No.
no, so it was just like hot, humid, and disgusting. It was after one of our 3 p.m. runs, and these guys would work grounds. Like they would do all, they'd be schlepping mulch, they'd be digging holes, and then they'd run with us. We'd go lift in the weight room, and this kid must have been just so boggled. He turns and he goes, and he spit on the carpet. We were like, so
Oh
that wasn't
no.
great. But yeah, that was definitely one of the wildest things I've seen in a weight room. That and of course, I think uh, I think it was at MSU Denver. Kids, I think they took like 3 plates off one side and the whole bar. I mean, like we've all seen it where you
Oh yeah.
unload too many plates at once. And man, thankfully nobody got hurt. But that basketball team, because I mean they're all so tall and everything, we were like, what is going on? So yeah, that was pretty wild. But
Um, what what about the future lights you up the most right now? What are you most excited about?
So I leave for China actually on Friday. So, or
What?
yeah, so with the U.S. Women's Lacrosse national team for the
Okay.
sixes, we are competing. They are competing, excuse me, and I get to be their strength coach there. They are competing in the World Games, and that'll be in Chengdu, China. August 7th through the 12th will be our competition. So I'm just like, that's what I'm excited for. I'm
That's
excited that I
super
get to,
cool.
yeah, be involved with any team that is potentially part of the Olympics, So, because LA 2028 would be next. So for me, it's just kind of, I'm really excited that, you know, you know, I feel like the hard work doesn't ever stop, but it is really
Mhm.
nice, I think, to just like, okay, wow, look at all this cool stuff I've been able to be a part of, and now I get to really enjoy it. And I get to enjoy it because I'm at a place that has 8 staff members. Like I can ask people to help me cover my athletes while
Mhm.
I'm gone. Like stuff like that is you really get to enjoy it. And you don't feel like you're like crazy running to the next thing. My brother jokes with me. He's like, I told him the next tattoo I want is the dual-sided candle burning at both ends, and he's like, that's you. And I'm like, I know. And I feel like I'm finally can just enjoy things for a minute.
The question that jumped out in my head as you were talking was, do you ever stop and feel proud of yourself?
Ooh, I think it really is. It's a reflection piece. I keep a journal, and
Mm,
I think when I stop and I look around, I'm like, wow, like it
that's
is.
so
Um,
important.
but yeah, but it took me a long time to get there because I think for many years I've just always been very hard on myself.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So.
The last question I have for you: if there was a billboard on the side of the highway for everyone to read and you could have a message for them all, what would
Mhm.
it be?
Well, what's on my board right now is thick, solid, tight. Keep up the good work. So,
Oh my God. Nice.
so yeah. So put that on a t-shirt, put it on a billboard, thick, solid, tight, keep up the good work.
That might be the title of the podcast.
There you go.
If there was someone that you would like to see me interview on the podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Oh, okay. I think Matt Nine, if you haven't already had him on, I think he'd be a really cool dude for you to, because he's on the men's side for US Lacrosse, but he's the one who really paved the way for a lot of the opportunities that I've been very fortunate to have. So he's got, I think he has like 13 or 14 national championships. He doesn't have any more room on his fingers anymore. So
that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, thank you so much for joining me today. This was an absolute pleasure. It was great to get to know you, and hopefully we can maintain this connection and friendship.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's my pleasure. I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes in case they want to get into the world of women's lacrosse or dive into the NSCA.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.